Jesus said to the blind man, "What do you want me to do for you?" The man replied, "Master, I want to see." And Jesus told him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." And immediately he received his sight. Do you want to see as Jesus sees? Do you want to think as Jesus thinks? Then you have to learn from the gospel. You have to learn from the tradition of the church that Jesus founded. One of the things the church is teaching us is we have a moral duty to vote. Voting is a civic and moral duty. It's a responsibility for all of us. Pew Research says that most Catholics don't vote. That's a problem. It goes on to say that most Christians don't vote. So we get the elected officials chosen by those who do vote. We have a moral duty to vote, so don't set that aside. Now, how do we decide who to vote for? Well, the church gives us principles, not candidates, but principles. So we can't rely on our relatives. We mustn't pressure people to vote for one person or another. We can't rely on the mainstream media. They've proven themselves to be dishonest in many, many ways. So we have to find better sources of news. Most are so unreliable. So we rely on our conscience, the inner sanctuary of every person. We form the conscience with the gospel, and we form it with the moral tradition that flows from it. So in situations, for example, where there are two candidates, perhaps neither is particularly desirable or even morally excellent, we choose the lesser of two evils. Not that any one person is evil, but simply the positions that they stand for, the policies that they advocate for are better or worse than their opponent. And so we have to make judgments. We don't vote for people because of their demographic. We don't vote for someone because they're Irish Catholic. We don't vote for someone because they're of a lower income group and perhaps had to fight their way up. We don't vote against someone because they're rich, and I'm not going to vote for them. We don't vote for them because of their particular racial group or their confessional creed. Catholics are very sensitive to this. Way back in the early part of the last century, we find that Governor Al Smith of New York, the one who built the Empire State Building, ran for president as a Catholic and was horribly, unabashedly destroyed, criticized and mocked because he was a Roman Catholic. To this day, they still have the annual dinner in his honor, the Al Smith dinner. Normally, both candidates go. Time to poke fun at each other and themselves. This year, only one candidate went. But we look at the policies that they hold. Sometimes it's difficult because a candidate might even be at odds with their own political party, but we look at the policies that they hold. Now, here's the part I want you to listen to very carefully. There are two levels of moral issues. There are absolute moral issues, and there are prudential moral issues. Absolute moral issues are the ones we start with. Absolute moral issues, it means that they're always right or always wrong. No circumstance, no intention can change them. They're absolute truths. There's a hierarchy of truths. So, for example, abortion and euthanasia are always things that we think of in this area. There's no state of affairs, no circumstance, no intention that can make them morally justifiable. There's no way to justify them. We can actually throw in IVF, in vitro fertilization, again into that same group. Do you know that they take a woman, they'll take 10 to 20 eggs would be an average. They'll fertilize them. 80% are fertilized. So now we've got 8 to 16 ovum, embryos really. We've got these little children. They implant as many as they might need. Some they leave in suspended animation. Others they'll selectively abort. So abortion is actually part of the process of in vitro. There's no way to morally justify this. First of all, it takes it out of the union of a loving union of a husband and wife and into the petri dish of a technician. That's immoral already. But then the death of the embryos and all the rest, this is immoral. There's no way to justify these things. Perhaps some people have been talked into it or carried it out. They need to confess the sin. We're not against the child. The child is a gift from God nonetheless. But this is a wrong thing to do, a wrong thing to propose. So we need to know these things. That's important. So these are some of the absolute moral issues. Now below them, important but less important, are prudential issues. These might include foreign wars, the economy, immigration. People can have different views on these things. There can be multiple correct answers. There's not a right or wrong answer in most of these issues. And so we have to be very sensitive, very careful. We want to listen, we want to learn, we want to find out what we can know about these things. So again, the absolute moral issues admit no compromise. Then the prudential ones. And again, the moral ones actually shed light on the prudential. So they're actually somewhat connected, but the absolute moral issues we pay close attention to. Now, we have to be very careful we don't equate them because that's not true. It wouldn't be the right thing for us to do. Where are the candidates' policies and where do they stand on the issues? Now, how do we apply that in this election? Regarding absolute moral principles, neither of the presidential candidates are pro-life. Now, we can apply the principles of greater or lesser. One candidate wants to push abortion back to the states. The other wants Roe versus Wade to be allowing abortion, unlimited abortion, up to birth, perhaps even beyond, to be the law of the land again. So there's different degrees in which they support these things. Both candidates support the abortion pill. Both of them support IVF. Those are wrong, so we have to understand that. But is one worse than the other? Now, I'd like to not let us pass over the question of abortion and just check off a box there. Do you know that it's such a heinous crime? We find that St. Faustina, whose picture, by the way, is up there. She's got the Divine Mercy picture up on the far left. St. Faustina, in her diaries, her conversations with Jesus taking place back in the 1930s in Poland, Jesus said to her that there was one city in Poland that was going to be totally destroyed for the sin of abortion. We might think that was Warsaw, utterly destroyed in World War II. And there's a lot of D&Cs that happened back then that weren't D&Cs. They were actually abortions. It was going on around the world. Happened in northern Minnesota on the Iron Range, happened down here in the Twin Cities. A lot of D&Cs were actually abortions. And it began to shape the mentality of the people even back that far. These are problems. One of our presidential candidates makes abortion, the killing of babies, a centerpiece, bringing it up in every public appearance. The fact that the election is even close frightens me. These are lifestyle issues. Have we become a fornicating people, a murderous people? Have we become like that? Is that really who we are? The fact that the election is even close and that becomes a centerpiece issue frightens me. We seem to defend every abominable lifestyle, the killing of babies, mutilation of children, and then we think, can God bless us? He's destroyed other nations for these sins. So it's time for us really to pay attention. These are things we have to hold close to our hearts. We have to watch over them very carefully. So these are big, significant issues for us. We need to know about that. Now, the prudential issues, we want to look at those carefully as well. Again, foreign wars are prominent, economy, immigration, and the moral darkness from these other issues sometimes goes down onto the others so that we're morally blind even on the prudential issues. It matters what we think. It matters how we look at these things. Now, immigration is a prudential issue. It's something which allows for many, many options. Now, nations have the right to control their borders. Nations show great generosity by allowing immigrants into their country. In the past, most nations admitted immigrants based on the need of the nation and the ability of the nation to assimilate them. Immigration that is too rapid allows immigrants to remain whatever nationality, whatever language they came from, rather than adopting the ways and the language of the nation to which they are now residents. Open borders and uncontrolled immigration are typically bad for a nation. France right now is a good example of that. Now, the United States has had uncontrolled immigration for 4 years. You get to decide, do you think that was a good idea? You decide. Uncontrolled immigration is also allowed in many criminal elements because they were utterly unvetted. You must decide. This is your duty. You have to weigh these things. How should our nation address the issues? Various solutions are proposed to deal with this. Remember, again, this is a prudential question, not a moral absolute. Abortion kills children. None of the immigration options actually propose to kill immigrants. So again, the absolute moral issues and the prudential ones. We need to have these in our mind and heart. We need to weigh them well. These are the things that you and I must do as we go through an election. We go to our conscience. We make sure it's well formed. We assess the political parties and candidates. We apply the moral truths. We choose the good. We choose the lesser of two evils. Then, after praying that these things might serve the common good, we get ready to cast our vote. Again, it's a moral duty for us to vote. It's important that you register to vote. So make sure you go to your conscience. Weigh all that's been presented by moral truth. Then cast your vote.